drinking earlier in the morning in the summer because the sun comes up earlier and the kids are home. And I
Well,
love my
hey,
kid.
I do.
I love my
Look,
kid.
mine are grown and
But
out
God
of the house.
almighty, I
Look,
miss school.
well, yeah, no, schools. I love summertime. As an adult, you feel like you're a kid in the summer. Hey, look,
I feel like an
last
Uber
night
driver.
the neighbors had the blinds pulled up. You know, cable's pretty damn
Whoa.
expensive, so they had the blinds pulled up. So I watched Auburn win the national championship, the men in golf out there in California. And I got to tell you, that was some of the most intense, stressful stuff to watch. I think we're missing out not showing enough college golf on primetime TV. Auburn beat Florida State 3-2 in that match play. That was incredible.
Well, we got into it last year with Florida. I mean, it was like one of the stories of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Florida. You get down to that nut cutting time, man. At J.M. Butler for Auburn, they were rolling Toomer's Corner last night. Crazy night, man. Hey, smash the subscribe button. It is. Golf is. I love golf because it is an honorable sport. It's a gentleman's sport. It's all about your honor is dearer than your life. That's golf. That's the way it is.
Your honor
is dearer than your life. That's how important it is. You've got to be truthful. You know the truth. Hey, smash that subscribe button, bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Subscribe. Every time we do something on SEC Sidelines Sports Network, it pops up. You get notified. Okay, allow notifications on Android and iPhone. There you are. There you are, boys and girls. Nick Kleiner at Auburn, men's golf coach, national champions.
National champs. Smash the subscribe button. Hit the like button. What else?
Hey, we got Coach Matt Dean on today. We got John Hartwell on. We've got Chris Lee going to join us about half past the hour of the Southeastern 14. Going to be a great day. Hey, look, you will get out of life what you accept. If you hit that snooze button, you're going to miss the sunrise, which leads to eating a good breakfast and having a great day. Only positive attitudes accepted at the door. Like the Marine Corps sign says, we don't take applications, only commitments. Sidelines, be right back after this.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hey, you will never, ever shy away from a national championship in any sport. Auburn men's golf wins it all out there in Carlsbad, California. Now, Carlsbad is not where one of the great writers of all time lived. I'm not sure, but that course, that was an intense course. John Hartwell, AD, University of Louisiana Monroe, over in, I think he's over there in the Research Triangle, Raleigh, North Carolina, not too far from Mount Pilot and not even much further from Mayberry. Now, I know he's over there for the trial of Otis Campbell, but John, welcome aboard. Coach Matt Dean at Rhodes College, the most gorgeous campus in a city in America, right by the Memphis Zoo, one of the great zoological parks. That's what my dad had to do his thesis on in architecture when he was in college, was on a zoo. And his first job was to design, I think, the Sears that they put into Laurelwood back in '57, a great year for wine, cars, and Auburn. So anyway, hey, got a great one today. Brenden Martin, executive producers down there in Ocala. And I'm telling you what, man, there's never a time off. I was watching those spring meetings at the SEC in Destin. John, you were down there like 2 weeks ago for your spring meetings on 30A. You know, again, why can't they choose some glamour spot like Jackson, Mississippi, or Platte, Nebraska, or Devil's Lake, North Dakota in January? But anyway, I'll digress on that one. How y'all doing?
Yeah, doing well. Good to see you guys today. Yeah, Research Triangle doing a panel tomorrow next up with some aspiring men's and women's basketball coaches to give them some experience in mock interviews and interview aspiring head coaches. So good to be with you guys.
Well, glad to be here as well, man. And I like this guy, George. I'm in Oregon. It's too early in the morning for this. My God, my blood pressure's already 200 over 100. Man, that's intense. Matt Dean watched that golf last night on the Golf Channel. And John Hartwell and I and Brenden were talking before we got on the show. Cable's so damn expensive, you have to hope your neighbors have the blinds pulled up, and mine did. And I got the binoculars out and I watched it. That was pretty exciting. Why don't we have more men's and women's college golf on TV in prime time? That stuff was exciting. Match play especially.
Here's the easy answer. You don't have enough cameras to be able to afford it. I mean, The reason golf's so popular when you watch the Masters or whatever is we go to a course with a tournament. You see how many towers they got. I mean, in college golf, the angles you get, I mean, it's just not the same thing.
Yeah, I was up on the Spring River over the weekend with a friend of mine. His brother is executive producer of CBS Golf, Sellers Shy, and from Memphis, and went to Ole Miss, and talked about how he got on that, and he got that job. It was unbelievable. I mean, like anything else, guys, he had to work and do anything they asked, and I think that memo has been lost on college athletes, thinking that, you're a freshman, you should be making $1 million a year. And you know what I'm starting to see more of? I'm starting to see a return to loyalty more than we want to give credit to. Guys and gals are saying, look, I'm staying here because, John, as a student athlete that let's say you were not an athletic director and you said, I want to move into the low country. I want to move back to Charleston. I want to practice accounting. Would it be a good idea for you to take the alumni directory of the Citadel and do a little ring knocking? You think maybe you might get some interviews and some business relationships with the guys, your fellow knobs in your class over there? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I think that would be, it's going to be interesting to see, let's look five athletics landscape and the impact that portal and guys who and young ladies who train times during their college career, what that does to the affinity. And I know the three-letter word WI thing and it, folks overlook a lot of things, but the day back to your Auburn glory day, Rob, Pat Sullivan, Terry Beasley, guys that you grew up with that had the jersey of. I don't know if we'll ever what's going forward in college athletics.
Well, and John, you might want to reboot because you're breaking up about every other word, but I see where you're going. And Matt, along those lines, I mean, we got a lot of, SEC people and college folks listening, and you think about growing up as a kid. Now, they don't consider a lot of people the Panhandle, L.A., Lower Alabama, to be part of the state of Florida, but I do. And I grew up around a lot of Gators down at the beach and all, and we always had fun with it. Of course, they remember, Carlos Alvarez, John Reeves, Brantley, Scott Brantley or John Brantley. I remember as a kid getting the football magazine and the iconic photograph of a wide receiver from Florida. Y'all might remember him, Wes Chandler. He had the cropped jersey back when they wore the tearaway jerseys. I mean, Matt, that's what hooks us on. I can remember being as a young kid watching Hayden Fry at Iowa. I'm like, this guy, I love his accent. He's from Texas. I still believe David Whitley. I was on the Buddy Martin show. I love getting to come on there Tuesday nights. David Whitley's a great sports writer for the Gainesville Sun. And we were asking the question about college athletics, where's this going? What's going to happen? And David Whitley said something that I love. He goes, I know it's crazy, but the sport's pretty much idiot proof. We're addicted to college athletics. We love them. But I still think the stories need to be told about the great young men and women who are behind these jersey numbers, Matt. And you and John are so blessed. Y'all get to impact people's lives. Let's talk about it.
Well, yesterday I had the chance to get a chance to talk to Christian Brothers' legendary coach, Bubba Luckett. And we were reflecting back. The conversation was Phi Slam and Jamma a little bit, and Bubba had a great seat on the bench that game when Clyde Drexler dunked over Andre Turner. I think it was the Elite 8 game at Kemper Arena. And Coach Luckett was a part of that Memphis team. But it's just it's so true. So, Coach Luckett impacted both my sons' lives. They were managers on his teams. And to this day, college athletics, man, it mesmerizes. I remember back being 12, 13 years old in 1980 when Iowa made a run to the Final Four. And I can remember all the young players on that team. Yeah. I can't. If you give me some information now, Rob, I have to have a Post-it note to write it down so I don't forget. I'm sure John's been those days. You're an AD and you got 5 different things going at once. Like, okay, let me write this down and we'll get back to this. But I'll tell you, I can remember my long-term memory is still good, Rob. And that's what's so great about college athletics is, Rob, you've had some experiences when you were younger about your Auburn Tigers, and then you go to school there, and it's so passionate for you, and it's for all of us. And that's the one thing I didn't understand when I moved to the South was how passionate the Southeastern Conference fans were. I grew up a college fan in the Midwest, the state of Iowa, in the Big Ten, and I came here in '91, and my God, I got indoctrinated right away. It was just a different level, and X years later, my son's working, at A&M and now at Oregon in college football. It's just it's May 30th, whatever the date is, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation about recruiting for the college football year. I mean, I don't care. I'm not watching the NBA playoffs a little bit. Not much. I'll be honest with you. I'm thinking about college football.
Yeah. You know what? The NBA has really soiled itself, getting involved in all this other crap. They are paying for it. The numbers are abysmal. The TV ratings. John Hartwell, you just heard Matt talking about it, and again, growing up in the South, the passion that we have, it's so important. I was up on the Spring River over the weekend fishing. Man, we caught a bunch of rainbow trout, 147 to be exact. Of course, we could only keep 9 limits of 5 per fisherman, so we threw 102 of them back. And we use the special tongs where you just take the hook, you don't even touch the fish, you shake it, and they get off. A lot of talk about football, man. Yesterday we had Jake Wimberly from Jackson, Mississippi on his predictions about the upcoming season. And right now, you go 1 through 16. He's got Texas going 12-0. He's got Florida going 2-10 as the worst team in the league. I'm gonna make a bet with him. The famous steamer pack of crystals, a box of fluorescent bulbs, and a 30 rack of hams that Florida wins more than 2 games. But this time of year, as an athletic director at ULM, Sun Belt, y'all got your stuff going on. Everybody's undefeated. What are coaches? What's a typical day right now? And when do they get to spend some time with their families?
The 5th of never. No,
that's a point.
Sometime in July. I mean, our guys, we had a lot of newcomers report over the last couple of days and trying to get those guys acclimated and checked in and physicals and issued gear and making sure that all of their academic papers are straight. So it's like Christmas because we have a bunch of newcomers and that's one of the byproducts of the transfer portal. Some of those guys are freshmen. Some of them are upperclassmen. You got a guy, and I know we touched base on this a couple of weeks ago, the all-name team already. I will put him up against any quarterback. General Booty. He reported to campus, a lot of buzz about the Oklahoma transfer who comes from a pretty successful and famous athletics name in the state of Louisiana. His dad, Abram Booty, was a wideout at LSU. His uncle Josh was a standout baseball and football player, quarterback at LSU. So there's really not, I say the fifth of never somewhat in jest. I think if you talk to any coach's spouse, they would probably agree with that. But it's a year-round cycle right now.
Yeah, and guys, there's a lot of meetings going on. Everybody, let's get down to it right now. Got a question here from Randolph and Mortimer Duke. They're commodities traders, Duke and Duke Commodities. And their question is, and it's texted to me, and Matt, I'll throw it to you first. What in the wide world of sports are we to take to extrapolate from the recent settlement, proposed settlement, whatever, House versus NCAA? Because we had heard it wasn't even coming to trial till January. But most stuff is settled. Is this good or bad for college athletics? Matt Dean, you do it, and then we'll go to John.
Well, John, we missed you last week because Rob threw me this curveball question, and I didn't know what the hell we talked about a week ago. But I've had a chance to talk to some of my colleagues at your level, John, and different levels, and you helped me through this. But one of my thoughts are with this ruling, and essentially, I don't know how they're going to operate, but it almost appears like there's going to be a $20 million cap on what you can institutionally pay for a department NIL, if I'm understanding things correctly. Okay. Now, if that's the case, there are some institutions, I'm guessing, John, that can't pay that. I mean, and it's going to be interesting how this shakes out. And I also heard that if this is the reality, we're going to have a lot of Title IX lawsuits coming down the fold because some institutions, John, are going to put a lot of that money in football, basketball only, as you know, and there's going to be some equity issues. So am I off base here, John? Please lead me down the right path.
No, I don't think you're off base at all. So here my couple of takes on it, Rob, and then I'll comment on what Matt said. One, I'm always a glass half full guy. So I'll say this. I believe that for the next 11 or 12 years, because obviously this is a 10-year payment cycle that everybody in Division I gets a piece of the pie, if you will. I don't say that as a positive term because everybody in Division I is going to pay for a portion of it. But what I think it absolutely does is it will keep FBS football together for the next 10 years, because I don't think you see folks opting out. There's too much money in this. And I do think there was a possible, if not even probable, scenario where you might have seen a breakaway if there was not some type of settlement in this. So I think that's a very positive thing for the next 10, 11, 12 years, because even though a settlement was announced, it's going to take at least a year to dig through the minutia and the calculations of who gets what. We know what the settlement nut, if you will, is, but how that gets distributed is going to be interesting. And that's back to Matt's point. Title IX, how that plays into this, and I guarantee you it will play in because you've got some lawyers probably licking their chops right now.
Yeah.
But you've got two different ends of the spectrum about how people are looking at approaching this. Those who really don't want Title IX to be involved are saying, hey, this revenue distribution is really going to be done based on what drives the value of the television rights for the various leagues. And just in rough figures, 85%, and it may even be higher in a couple of leagues, but roughly 85% of the revenue generation from television contracts comes from college football. And I know some people who are basketball purists may say, wait, hold on just a second. I'm telling you, that is the right number. It may even be a little bit low, but 85% of the value comes from college football. Probably 13% comes from men's basketball. It may even be higher than that. And at most, I would say 2% comes from everything else. Women's basketball, baseball probably have the highest. Gymnastics is in there. But everything else is probably less than 2%. So if you follow that logic and how dollars are dispersed, the Title IX proponents are going to have a huge issue with that. But I know some people are of that train of thought. And I also think not only going forward with the $20 to $22 million that Matt was talking about, but also what gets awarded in past damages. So, that will be interesting to see how all that is worked out over the next year. So there are still a lot of variables in this deal. And again, I think the real winners in this whole deal are going to be the attorneys out there who will continue to file a litany of lawsuits related to this topic.
And I read from Philip Marshall's column last week that the lawyers, and I've got an attorney. I mean, Jack Turner, he's the barrister in residence on Sidelines. Love him. Got a lot of them in my family. But he said the attorneys on this case will make about $100 million. And the settlement is what, $18,000 a year for 10 years for some of these student athletes. But I think what's going to happen, if you look at the free market, and you had said, John, a couple of months ago on this very show, that 97.3% of NIL money being paid out is going to male athletes. Now, you can't just make people, give, but, I got 2 boys, 2 girls. The lesson now is, Matt Dean, you know this, and John, follow the money trail. What makes the money? That's going to be a tough one. I'm concerned, Matt, that half the sports that we have now in a couple of years are going to be club level sports, if they're even around. But we also know the value of playing sports, the lessons that you learn from them. And, you've got kids that have grown up in this woke crap where they don't keep score and everybody gets a trophy. And that's not how the real world works. If you sit on your ass at work and don't sell anything, you don't get a paycheck. I mean, somebody's got to tell them this is what really happens.
Well, John, I had another question because I heard you bring up the biggest point. The revenue portion of this, of the sports that are revenue producing, are obviously what you described. I also talked to a former AD that said it would not shock this person in the future if what he deems the Olympic sports would almost take on a Division III model, and there'd be some waiver you sign, so you could see, and this is all based on revenue that this person was talking about, that you have your 3 or 4 sports that were the revenue ones that are getting the benefits of this money, and the rest of the department always has a Division III model. And I don't know if that's extreme, but it's one way to fight the equity argument. If you take an Olympic model where we're maintaining amateur status for some of our Olympic athletes, or Olympic sports, I'm sorry, because we use that term a lot in Division I. I'm just curious on your thoughts on something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of buzz out there. Could you potentially see scenarios where schools have football? So let's say if the number stays at 85 scholarships for FBS, if you have 85 football scholarships, you have 13 men's basketball scholarships. And if baseball, goes beyond the 11.7 scholarships that you can award right now, and let's say it goes to 30 or 40 or whatever number that may be, and let's assume that XYZ institution is 50% male, 50% female, well, those three sports, football, men's basketball, and baseball, may be the only three men's sports you have that are scholarship based. And then you have the equivalencies, on the women's side, whatever that may be, women's basketball, volleyball, softball, whatever down the line to equal out male scholarships versus female scholarships. But in those scenarios, the people that are really worried, and it will be interesting to see how this plays out. Men's track and field, who has large numbers, or other men's Olympic sports. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand or realize is the value that intercollegiate athletics plays to the Olympic development, not only, primarily of U.S. Olympic athletes, but when you look at all the international student athletes participating in all of these sports from countries all over the world, that is such a benefit, especially to the United States Olympic Committee, that group does not have to spend the developmental funds that other countries across the world have to. And all of a sudden, if those sports are gone or they become club sports, you may see a shift in that area as well.
Yeah, and that's the problem, and that I think that's what everybody's talking about is that we're not getting. I'm really concerned with that. That's exactly right. We have 91 NCAA national championships, okay, in men's and women's sports. Football, obviously, the CFP is a separate deal, and the one March Madness, the men's tournament makes $1 billion plus every year. After that, it's the Men's College World Series. We got to be careful. I'm telling you, the last thing we need in America is fewer people playing sports and more people sitting on their butts doing nothing. I mean, it's as basic as that. What makes college possible for a lot of people is a scholarship. It changes people's lives. It's why people that we all know give money to causes that are dear to their heart. And, I'm telling you, we better watch it. I don't want to see half the sports gone. I think that's dangerous territory. And your college, hey man, you win a national championship in bowling at Vanderbilt. I mean, hey, that gets them excited. That's, they've won 2 or 3. Like I said, Auburn men's golf wins it all out there in Carlsbad, California yesterday. That's huge. And I can tell you there were no less toilet paper thrown at Toomer's Corner than there would be at a football. It was huge last night. I saw Guy May and his family and a lot of people down there. I think what we got to do, and Chris Lee's going to be on with us in a second from the Southeastern 14, we need to really think about what we want college athletics to look like going forward. I got 2 really smart guys here on the show today, both of y'all athletic directors, and understand it. First off, real quick, Matt, is the NCAA going to be around, do you think, in 10 years?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
But you got to remember too, and kind of what John's talking about too is, this is driven. Let's not kid ourselves here. A lot of this is driven by TV revenue. Rob, it's great that Auburn won a national championship in golf.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about watching that, and why don't we have more college golf on TV? It's all based on ratings, and people are going to watch what excites them. That's why college football is never going away, or men's basketball and women's basketball this year. I mean, you look at the WNBA ratings right now are up historically because of a great college player that came in that was a little unique. Okay. Yeah. Even though her team's not doing well, she had 30 points the other night.
And she's being treated really well.
Well, it'll get better. She needs to have some players around her. You know what I'm saying?
I know.
But it's unfortunate because I've been in the college realm for 33 years. Yeah. And at the Division III level, when we sell our product, it's all about what Rhodes could do for you after the degree, right? We want you to have a great student-athlete experience, but it's what we can do after the degree. And this is instant gratification. And I was talking to someone last night. We were talking about some of these schools. They may be the Auburn LLC of football because of where we're going. They're going to play in your stadium, but it's going to be different because if I give you a one-time signing bonus of $150,000 to be my offensive lineman, we have some other things we have to figure out. We have huge, the tax side of this, the financial literacy side of this. I know it's been going on for a few years, but if this happens, it's going to blow up big time. And we need, John, a lot more people in your department to figure stuff like this out to help you if this is going to be, more of a big time operation.
Yeah, you make a great point there, Matt, because again, this goes back. Part of the House settlement saying, okay, right now our estimates 20 to 22 million a year would be allowable for allocation to student athletes. But that is what is flowing through the department, or what is being generated through conference distributions to the department. There's a strong belief out there, and some people are already operating under this premise. Well, hey, we want, at the end of the day, whether that's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out, we're going to need more than 22 million a year. We want to keep our outside collective because, at least in the preliminary indications from the House settlement, an outside collective, i.e. the Grove Collective at Ole Miss, could still operate outside and could be over and above that number. And I'm just thinking to myself, hey, when you're looking at 20 to 22 million and then maybe another 10 to 12 to 15 million on top of that, you've got an annual potential payout to student athletes of $37 to $40 million.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bunch of money. And I've mentioned this on here before. What I worry about, fast forward 5 years, 8 years down the road, is another set of lawsuits. You're going to have student athletes who have been paid a potentially inflated amount of money while they were a student athlete. They're not good enough to make it as a pro, and they're going to come back and say, well, hey, the system has wronged me because I got $150,000 a year for the 4 or 5 years that I was in college. I've now got a XYZ degree, a sociology degree, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And guess what? I can't walk out in the workforce and get a job from day one making $150,000.
Right.
I'm not going to have the same lifestyle I was accustomed to while I was a student athlete. What's wrong with this picture? Why have I been shortchanged? And that's what I'm afraid we're going to get to at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's something, again, I'm looking at some of these comments, George, if somebody will give me $150,000 a year, I will put my body on the line. And we're it's kind of interesting. What an E1 in the Marine Corps or the Army makes? I mean, it ain't a lot. It's $21,000 a year. They put their body on the line. They put their life on the line. All things are relative. It's only $20 million a year over the table. There's no limit on under the table. Not that ever goes on. It just doesn't. Chris Lee, the Southeastern 14, joins us. You're on with John Hartwell, the AD at ULM. Matt Dean, Associate AD at Rhodes College in Memphis. Been talking a lot of business stuff, the House settlement, whatever it is. I thought you were in Destin at the SEC meetings, and so that's why I didn't call. Late last night, it kind of hit me because you couldn't come on Tuesday. And welcome aboard. You're up there in Nashville. And again, Vanderbilt has, 3 national championship trophies in bowling. I don't care what it is. If outside of your name it says national championship, that's pretty powerful branding, isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously it's more powerful branding when it's football or basketball. But yeah, I mean, goodness, my head is spinning just from listening to all this. And that's not an indictment on the panelists here. It's just the world is moving. I'm just trying to get up to speed on the NCAA baseball tournament this week, right? Can we get everything else to stop spinning for a minute? And I'm sure that sentiment shared here.
No, look, I agree with you. And in fact, I love college baseball, and this is an exciting time of the year. You got, the NCAA, and looking there at Vanderbilt. You said something no one's ever said this before. That Tim Corbin a few years ago just said, "I can't take it. I got to get out of that athletic building. I've got to. It's toxic." He's over there on his own. He's from Maine. Last 10 years, has anyone won more baseball games and more championships than the Vanderbilt Commodores? Why can't the rest of the athletic department go to Tim Corbin and say, "Can we hang out with you more often? Can we drink what you're drinking?"
Well, it's New Hampshire, but close.
Okay, well, same thing.
He's actually brought in some players from Maine, yeah. I mean, look, Vanderbilt's kind of a different animal from everybody else, and even I think the world of insanity in the NCAA has kind of gotten Tim Corbin to the point where it's driving him crazy too, with all the things that you guys have to deal with, and I mean, there's just college sports is changing so quickly. I just don't. I think the stress on everybody and trying to keep up with it all is just hard to deal with, including him.
Yeah, it is, and looking at what's going on, John. College baseball again. You've got the college football playoff over here, March Madness men's tournament, and then the College World Series for the men. That's the second biggest NCAA moneymaker. You're up there right now in Raleigh, North Carolina, to meet with potential future coaches and teaching them how to interview and everything like that. Where are the next great coaches going to come from? Like a Tim Corbin, who, I mean, the guy. You're lucky, Chris. You said you were talking to him. I would love to talk to that man, just to listen to him. He's kind of along the Marcus Aurelius, the stoic. He's a stoic, but he's a winner. He's brilliant. But John, where are we going to find these next Tim Corbins and guys like your football coach that you got, Vincent Bryant down there at ULM? You found that guy.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is changing in the current environment, like Chris said, it changes on a daily basis, is player development has been, especially in the sport of baseball, player development has been so key. You go from kids playing high school, you develop them, you see some characteristics that that you can build on, but you've got to understand that if you're at a Sunbelt school or some other places, and maybe even some SEC schools where the NIL bank is not that high, that, hey, if you develop this young player and they have a breakout season, at the end of every year, they're going to test the free agency market. And that's what it is. Free agency has always been deemed a professional term. That's what we've got in the transfer portal right now with the NIL money. They're going to see what their value is out there right now. And, in my conversations the last couple of weeks with a couple of baseball coaches, kind of the going rate for a really good player to potentially jump from a group of 5 school to an SEC team is about $150,000 a year on the baseball front. I mean, that's not men's basketball. That's not a quarterback in football. That's in baseball. And so it's a big deal. But I still think player development is really key. But and baseball guys, and I love them to death. The Mike Biancos, you go back, the Skip Bertmans, all of these guys, baseball guys know about every blade of grass. The successful ones know about every blade of grass on their field. They know they are attention to detail guys, and they're old school. Baseball guys have probably been the last ones to want to adapt to the transfer portal and NIL. But it's either adapt or die. I mean, and that's kind of a harsh term, but if you're not in that game now, it's really, really tough.
Yeah. Chris, I mean, I like what he said, and I agree with him.
I feel And I'm not doing this to pander. I feel badly for you guys, but because and I say this, my best friend's a compliance officer at a D2 school, and we have talks every week about the stuff they go through. And I know I'm the SEC guy in the room, and I guess the expectation is I'm supposed to be leading the cheers here, but I just see so much that's not good for everybody. You've got a system. Mike Leach, I've brought this up on your show before. Mike Leach had the best quote his last media days when he talked about imagine if you brought to the NFL unlimited salary caps and year-to-year free agency. How would that go? And you see it every day, and it's worked its way down to other sports.
Yeah.
I'm a free market guy, and I'm all for I think the NCAA, 15 years ago or whatever it was, you had the Marcus Claret thing where,
oh yeah.
And you had, Ohio State's whole football program got wrecked because some guy went out and got a tattoo. That was ridiculous. But so is this. There's no structure. And when you have no structure and no rules, what it does is it incentivizes the bad actors. Because when there's no guardrails, the people who will do anything and everything to win will go and do it. And then it's like being on the interstate where the speed limit is 55 and everybody's driving 105. Well, you probably don't want to drive 105, but you're going to get run over if you don't. That's a lot to unpack there. But I don't like what this has become. I feel badly for the guys at the level of these guys on our panel here because they're the ones that bear the brunt of it. You go out, you're a coach, you work hard, you're away from your family and your kids to recruit and all those things. And you find a guy somewhere that under a rock that nobody else has looked under. Used to be you got rewarded that. Used to be you could build programs on that. Now all that happens is the next guy comes and snatches the guy that you got and you spent your time on, and it just filters down in every sport at every level to the point it's chaos, and it's taking the good people out of this, and it's incentivizing the worst of the worst to do what they can do to win ball games, and it's horrible. And again, I love the SEC. I do. Grew up watching games. I think maybe you should have some different systems for different levels, but I just think what is happening and the failure of anybody anywhere to act and bring some order to it is just, it's an indictment on a lot of people.
Yeah, it is, Matt. You're seeing this, and I'm SEC, but I love college sports all over the country, and it is good for the morale of the country. And I see it in the workforce, and y'all do too. You see these people, they play D1, 2, or 3. It doesn't matter. They've got discipline. They understand structure. They understand overcoming adversity. Where else are we going to teach these people? I've been told this, and I don't know if it's true, but I've heard now, like you've got a little card in the military, if you're going through basic training, if someone's yelling at you too much, and you can raise the thing up and they have to back off. If that's true, if that is in fact true, God help us. I mean, you have to, there is, you know what? If you like the law or you like sausage, don't ever watch either one of them being made. And the third one to that list is don't ever watch us make Marines, airmen, soldiers, sailors, Coast Guard, basic training. That is off limits. You know what you're getting into. But Matt, jump in on this.
No, Chris, you make tremendous points. And one of the things, in my career at the non-scholarship Division III level at Rhodes, as a former coach and now an administrator, some of us are just development junkies, evaluation junkies, mind you. And we love that aspect of it. Now, Chris, it does hurt more at John's level now when you lose a kid who's really developed, but it's happening at our place too in baseball. Because the unique thing about baseball is you have 11.7, 11.8 scholarships. A lot of people don't know this. Charlie Condon, who was tearing up the SEC baseball. Do you know he was committed to Rhodes College to play football and baseball? He was then late in the game, he was offered a preferred walk-on at Georgia. He was coming to play two sports for us. We have a great program as it is in baseball. I can't imagine adding that young man to the roster. He's been phenomenal for Georgia. But, for us, we've had our best two pitchers are in the portal right now after their sophomore year. And they go – and what happens is in baseball, our guys go off in the summer and they play in some of these leagues up in the Northeast or the Midwest or whatever. Division I coaches are there. They spot them, especially if you're a pitcher, especially if you're a lefty. And we've lost some good kids. Now, we've had some grad transfers. We've had a young man, John Medich, pitch at Georgia Tech, going to get his master's there. It was a really cool story. And we're going to have some of that because of our academic side. But we're seeing now in the player development, our top reliever is in the portal right now. And he was a high school teammate of Charlie Condon. He's like, Coach, I want to come back. I'm probably coming back. But what if Georgia says, hey, we're going to offer you this? I mean, it's hard to turn down. And I think you just don't know. In places like a lot of Division III schools, we harbor a lot of talent, I think, in the sport of baseball. Basketball and football, not really the case because you know what you got in basketball. I mean, basketball and football. But in baseball, some of these guys may be sitting at 88, 90 as a high school senior. And then by the time they're a sophomore in college, they may be 93, 95, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. That is, you never know what you're going to hear on Sidelines on this Thursday panel. That's an unbelievable story about Charlie Condon. And Chris, I know you love baseball. Braves. I got the Braves cup from Mallory lives 0.97 miles from the Battery, so I walk home from there a lot. Look, Major League Baseball, guys, is benefiting from, as John, you alluded to this a minute ago, the player development. There are over 50 SEC players on opening day rosters when Major League Baseball threw the first pitch back in early April. That didn't used to be the case.
Yeah, I was having this discussion with a baseball coach the other day, and you look again now with NIL money pretty significant in college baseball. You're probably going to have more kids who opt to go to college, at least for a couple of 2 or 3 years, than maybe playing in the major league, in the minor league, going right out of high school.
Yeah.
I promise you, the mode of travel and the salary is going to be higher SEC level than it is in the South Atlantic League. I mean, you're on a bus from Johnson City, Tennessee to, Charleston, Savannah, to wherever else you go. Hey, why wouldn't you go to Starkville or Oxford, Fayetteville, where you could play in front of 8,000 to 10,000 folks every night? You're getting $100,000 and NIL money, and oh, by the way, you're getting education too. So that will be an interesting thing to follow as well. One other thing I was going to mention about coaches, and you asked about what you're looking for in coaches these days. The more money that gets pumped into student athletes, I think the more you're going to have to see people not only be X's and O's folks or recruiters or player development people. You're going to have to be a psychologist to deal with all of the egos and hurt feelings and everything else on that roster. Hey, he's making more than I am, but I'm playing more minutes or I'm getting more snaps. I need my money adjusted. I mean, that's coming. I promise you. It's already there in some places, but that's going to become even more prevalent.
Chris?
Yeah. And here's the thing, okay? Malcolm Gladwell did a really good essay a few years ago in one of his books. I can't remember which one. It was about once you introduce money into things, like people will do stuff for free and they'll approach it with an attitude. But once you introduce money into things, the whole dynamic of stuff changes. Mm-hmm. And expectations go. I mean, you've now got a quarterback at one SEC school suing another one over broken promises, involving a third-party collective. And it just, Pandora's box has been opened by a factor of I don't know how much here. Yeah, I mean, all that to say that the pace of change is dizzying. The analogy that I always use is it's like we've opened an airport and we've said anybody can fly a plane in now at any time and land on the ramp, but you have no idea whether there's 100 planes trying to land on the ramp at any one moment and what that looks like, and because there's no law and order at the top, you get all these things, and then it filters down. Go back to where I started with the money. You've now got dynamics that coaches aren't used to deal with. I mean, I guess you always had them, in the SEC where kids were getting paid under the table in the 70s and 80s and whatever, but they were different. They weren't as public.
Yeah.
And just the dynamic we have, it's just everything has happened so quickly. I think it's hard for everybody to keep stock of, and the mental health, I think, of players and coaches is obviously a big concern.
Yeah. And Matt, along those lines, if you're a coach and you're just constantly having to talk about NIL with players versus talking about player development and coaching them, that's going to lead to a higher burnout rate, I think.
Well, and we've kind of seen it a little bit, a couple years ago. And I'm not saying Jay Wright left college basketball because of this alone. I get it. But for Jay Wright was 60, I believe, when he retired and got out of coaching and won 2 national championships.
Yes.
Is one of the best coaches in America, could coach at any level, professional, anyone would want him. And he's done really well in the broadcasting thing. And I just think you're going to see, coaches like my age, I'm 57, I coached for 26 years, if I have other opportunities, I really want to put up with what, as John describes, being a therapist now too, and I think it's a challenge. Now, I will tell you, a lot of us that kind of saw this coming, you almost have to approach it like, if you're a pro sport with like free agency. And that means you have to not only develop kids. I know this because my son works at Oregon as the director of player personnel. I mean, Dan Lanning's going to always recruit some elite high school kids, but on the same token, he's always going to look in the portal for positions of need. So that is a professional model. If you're not switching to that model as a coach, it's going to be harder for you, in my opinion. That way, you're prepared when you lose a kid, because you're going to replace that kid almost like in a free agency model or a waiver wire transaction, whatever you want to call it. If you're not operating that way in a major sport, in a major conference, then you don't have a chance, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is great discussion, man. I'm telling you, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle. I'm just the moderator. Somebody respond to what Matt said, because this is a lot of brain power, and we need to harness this. And I love these comments over here, by the way. I love this Dr. David Arnoff in Panama City watching the show. I can't keep up with them, but I want all the players to get a $50,000 bonus, George says, if we get to Jacksonville undefeated and beat Georgia. Chris, holy cow. What were the two guys, Enos and the guys in Smokey and the Bandit, big and tall, That's what we're gonna have now with Texas in the league. I'm telling you, Enos. What were their names? I can't remember.
It's been a minute.
Give me 500 on the Bandit.
Oh,
But you know what I love? I love what Chris said, because it's exactly how I feel about sports. Because y'all are my friends. You've got Power 4, you got Group of 6, you got D1, D2, D3. It doesn't matter what level. I have the same affinity for sports on any level, because I work with people who played sports at every level. I can just tell you personally, guys, every intern we've ever had work with us from Rhodes College, they come in. How you fight is how you live. That's the Rumble boxing motto. These kids all thrive and prosper. But Chris, about player development. What's Tim Corbin like, just being around him? And because he said, I'm going to get every player within 250 miles of Nashville. I can build a national program. Well, it's kind of working out.
Well, he's a guy that's got some issues, and I haven't had these conversations directly with him. I've known Tim for 20 years, And I can pick up on things that he says in press conferences and pretty well piece together how he feels about things. I think I know that, just having dealt with him. He built a model on that kind of went something like this. Okay, we're recruiting kids every year. We're losing a couple of kids to the first round of the draft. We're getting some kids in school that might come to Vanderbilt that might go pro. And this is 5 years ago, how he did it, and everything's changed since. But because they were what they were, they got a chance to get in kids that other schools weren't, because you come to Vandy, we can make you a first rounder. You don't have to ride buses all over Butte, Montana at 3 in the morning. All the stuff that you guys went through a few minutes ago. And the other part of that was, if we like you as a kid and a leader, kids do develop, and we can develop players. And if you come, you might not play much the first couple of years because you're sitting behind, a first rounder. But stick it out, and maybe by the time you're junior, you can work your way in a platoon situation, or who knows, even start. You come in, you do the right things, you stay ahead of things in the classroom, you're a good teammate, and that's how he built a culture that's worked. And that's how he could get kids that weren't always superstars, but he had a chance to develop into players. And, oh, by the way, you can get a degree when you're done with that. Fast forward to now, where they've slipped. They've had losing seasons in the SEC 2 of the last 3 years. And the teams that are ahead of them in the standings right now in the league are kids that are players or coaches that are just going out. And again, this is a survival of the fittest thing, and everybody has to fall in line. He's getting criticized for developmental philosophies because everybody else is just going and poaching kids elsewhere. He didn't like that because it made him, I think, break the promises he'd made to the kids years ago. But now you got a fan base that's riding him and saying, hey, this guy isn't changing with the times. I can see that frustrates him. And now you put coaches in a situation, and Jay Wright was brought in this conversation, and I think it was totally fair. He built a whole system on doing things that I think were good for kids and the developmental kids. And now those are the guys that everybody's saying, I want you to put that guy on the altar, cut him from the team, and go out and poach a player from somewhere else that you didn't know till 5 minutes ago. Screw 3 or 4 years of relationships, get talent and win, because we're falling behind. And again, that's what happens when you incentivize the bad actors and you don't protect the good ones. And I look, everybody's human. I'm not saying Tim Corbin's perfect, but there's a lot of things about him I admire and respect, and how he's run his program. And it's just kind of all gone to hell in terms of how he wants to run it, and the way you have to run it now. And that's why you would hear his name pop up from time to time as a guy that may just say, like Jay Wright did, screw it, I'm done with this.
Yeah. And John, 3-4 years ago, I read a really good article about Jay Wright. When he first got to Villanova, in his first 3 years, they signed 5 players rated 5-star in basketball. Their record was about 500. So they did a deconstruction analysis. What the hell's going on here, man? We got all this talent, we're not winning. Well, they realized, A, they weren't recruiting to the culture. Villanova, a private Catholic university in Philadelphia, strict academic standards, and we got to recruit the right kind of kids. And they changed it, and then look what they did. They won several national championships in a 5-year period, and I won the office pool because I picked Villanova, and so I really like that. But it's about guys like Tim Corbin, Jay Wright. We need him back in coaching. And what we better be careful of, we're going to keep losing guys like that if this stuff doesn't get under control. Markets tend to correct themselves, but what drives the markets crazy is uncertainty, John.
Yeah, and, that makes me think of the old adage about, with all that is changing out there, the things that aren't changing. In basketball, there's only one ball and there's only 5 guys on the floor at a time. In baseball, there's only one guy up at bat at a time, or there's only 9 guys out on the diamond. In football, there are only 11 guys on the field at one time, one ball. So everybody going back to the Jay Wright analogy, he built a team and he built a program telling guys coming in, hey, every one of you aren't going to get 20 shots a game. That's not the culture and the system we're building.
Yeah.
And again, in today's world of the transfer portal, and hey, if the stars aren't aligned for me just right at XYZ University, screw it. I'm going in the portal and I'm going to ABC University where I can be the man. It's hard as hell for coaches, and that's why you see guys getting out.
Yeah. It's frustrating. I mean, because guys, the coaches that put their lives into these sports. And I know, Chris, we're going a little bit long today, Brenden said. So I know, Chris, you've got another show here in a few minutes, but again, we got to have coaches that feel like if I'm going to devote my time to it, and it's a lot of time away from your family because that's just what it is. It takes exceptional people to build great programs, guys. And we better make it appealing for people to go into coaching, or we are going to see the level of what will happen is there'll be less player development on the collegiate level, and it'll trickle into the NFL. Nick Saban, one thing we're going to hear from him, I'll predict, is, these guys are coming in and the development's really tapered off. Matt, anybody want to take a stab at that? I think that those comments are coming, and it's going to hurt the NFL because these guys are jumping ship. If they're not where they think they should be on the depth chart, they just leave. All the portal is now is purgatory for a lot of quitters.
Getting the coaches' development, just a thought here, because I know I'm doing it as a former coach. I have a handful of my former assistants and former players that are head college coaches, right? I've got some friends that know Jay Wright personally. I know Jay's already doing this. I mean, part of our job moving forward is to provide mentorship, be there on those phone calls when our former players or assistants have questions about how do I fix this, and continue to mentor coaches and student athletes. And I'm sure Nick Saban is going to be involved in that process, Rob, behind the scenes. We won't know about it publicly, but that's what we do. We are such an incredible network of coaches. I call former players all the time. I reach out to former assistants all the time. I was walking through some stuff this year with one of my former players who's a head coach about coverages on zones. I mean, I think there's still development going on in the coaching industry behind the scenes of people that have left this that will go on to the day they die. I know how coaches operate. And we're going to continue to make the game better and grow the game and those type of things.
Yeah. Chris, I know you got to go. Closing comments, and we'll wrap up here in just a few minutes. This is great panel discussion. Thursday, Sidelines. Get out, support all of our sponsors like the great folks at Hewlett and Dunn. 25% off all boots through June 16th. Think about that, folks. Get out there. And also, if you like catfish, if you eat anything, the great folks at House Industries, houseindustriesinc.com. They make all the agricultural equipment in a 99,000 square foot warehouse in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, with a global reach. Their motto is breaking ground. Chris?
Yeah, really enjoyed being on with you guys today. Again, Matt, John, I think about you guys, people in your positions a lot, because I just think I don't know how you do your jobs. Because of just the poaching and everything that goes on. And I guess the question I just keep asking myself, and I'm just kind of in disbelief, how is it that we've got to the point that we don't have better leadership, that everybody just kind of sits there and throws their hands up and says, how do we stop this? I've never really understood, when you got a problem, get the right people in the room and talk it over. Hold yourselves up in Destin or somewhere for a week or two till you figured it out. It amazes me the lack of leadership from the big picture level. I'm not talking about you guys, but just that somebody out there hasn't stepped up and become the air traffic controller to keep all the planes from crashing into each other at once. And that's just the one thing I can't believe. We're 3 years into this system of things, And it feels like every step we take is a spiral out of control rather than a step towards control. And that's the thing that just puzzles me. And I'm not even the one sitting in their chairs.
Yeah. Chris, let people know how they can follow you. You do great work every day at Southeastern 14, and we'll do it again next week. Thanks for your time on here today.
Yeah, thank you. Go to YouTube, search Southeastern 14. We cover football, basketball, and baseball on a league-wide level. If you're looking for something on Auburn football, you're going to find better coverage out of your local beat writer. But if you're looking for somebody that stacks up all the teams in the SEC and in the three major men's sports and says, here's how it all fits together, I think we do a pretty good job of that.
You do a great job, man. Thank you so much, and love what you believe in, because I believe the same way, and it means a lot to have you on here.
Hey, thanks, guys, and sincerely, I mean the best of luck to both you guys. I hope that there's something coming that restores some sanity to your worlds.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. You too, my friend.
Me too. And you know what? And this is what it is. And John, I know you've got to get off to a meeting. We're going a little bit long today, but I really believe when you think about it, how many people are out there in business. Dave Tompkins, who's on Savant Friday with us, a West Point graduate, he said, you go back and look at everybody that made, Major General, Lieutenant General, 4-star, whatever, from West Point, everybody played sports. They all do. I mean, sports, they teach you the lessons of life, guys. And that's why, people talk about, I always tell you, I break this show down into 4 segments: preseason, competitive season, postseason, and off-season. This is the off-season. This is a pretty robust discussion, John Hartwell. And it's critical that we have input from people like you and Matt and Chris and I, both as, media guys, air traffic controllers is what we really are, advice aggregators. We really value y'all's thoughts and opinions.
Yeah, well, as always, great to be on with you guys. And Chris said, well, hey, I sympathize with you guys and don't know how you do it. Here's why I continue to do it, because I know these are not the majority of the student athletes at our level. I mean, we've got some that are, that are making money off of it. But the reason I do what I do has been and continues to be to help provide a vehicle for those young men and women who play a sport for the love of the game, for the competition, for the life skills that they learn. And oh, by the way, to get a sound basis, a really good education to help them in life way beyond the days their playing days are gone, which it afforded me. And that's why I do what I do. I know people may say, oh, that sounds kind of corny. Man, I live that the game of basketball provided me a great opportunity through high school, through college, parlayed into so many opportunities and relationships. I want to be able to pay that back, to give that forward to every student athlete who wants that opportunity.
Yeah, and there's not a client that I have in my 33 plus years as a financial advisor, on top of doing this show. A lot of them have been broke once, twice, 3 times. Partner took off with their money, took off with their wife, you name it. And they all talk about, man, I remember when I was playing high school football, or I played lacrosse in college, or I was a swimmer, knocking out 60, 80,000 yards a week in the pool. But I remember the lesson I learned, and that is, you got to keep fighting. And I also firmly believe, I really believe in this, you will get out of life what you accept. And if you want to see your future, look at the people you hang around with. And if you don't like that, find new friends. But John, have a safe trip up there in the Research Triangle. Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill. Say hi to Otis. Hold on. Goober says hey. And by the way, if you go to Mayberry, I want a photo, and we will post it on the show tomorrow, okay?
All right. Hey, thank you guys so much. See you guys next week.
All right. Take care, man. I love it. John Hartwell, AD, University of Louisiana Monroe. And guys, Matt, this is awesome. At all levels of college. We've had this for a long time. but find me somebody that you work with that played sports that isn't typically the toughest or one of the toughest people in that office. Okay, Matt, wouldn't you agree? Look at your two boys growing up with Coach Matt Dean, a 6'3", 198-pound junior from Davenport, Iowa.
Probably the last time I weighed 198 was my junior year of high school.
But you're from the Quad Cities.
Listen, this was a really powerful show, and I'll close with my thoughts on this. Like, Chris had mentioned, he doesn't know how John and I do it, man. We are blessed. I mean, I've had a 33-year career in a combination of coaching and now administration, and I've been able to be a part of student athletes' lives. And now that I'm a little older, I see them having success outside of the court, and that's a feeling. It's hard to get that feeling anywhere else, Rob. I mean, it really is. And yes, is it a lot different than when I started? But Rob, I could probably say the same thing about your industry. I'm sure there's a lot of things that have changed in your 3+ decades of doing what you're doing, or your father's industry. Every industry, every career path changes with time. And Chris is about one thing. We're right about one thing. I think we need better leadership. It's like at the top now. I mean, we need better leadership, and it trickles down. So, thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate being here.
Hey, look, and I'm going to tell you something. Leaders eat last. You know what? Take care of the people around you and think through the moment. Coach Butch Thompson at Auburn baseball always says, don't let the moment be bigger than it is. And he also says something that makes a lot of sense. We don't fail in life because we aim too high and miss. We fail in life often because we aim too low and hit and think that's okay. Hey, think about it, man. We're the most blessed country in the world. Most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. To all of our viewers and listeners, like Dave Cody out in Bellingham, Washington, and this guy, George, I got to meet him, man. I love his passion. Dr. Arnoff, the Swamp Boys, people all over. We are here to serve. Subscribe, tell your friends, family, and neighbors about it. We got the best executive producer, Brenden Martin, in the world. Check out the Buddy Martin Show tonight. It's orangeandbluebloods.com. Big Ben, Franz, all of them on there. Great stuff. We'll see you tomorrow, man. Have a great day. It's an awesome time to be an American.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.